I get asked a lot how I come up with all of my key levels that I'm charting, the ones that I'm sharing with the group in the morning. And I wanted to let you kind of in on that process. And I think a lot of people think that this is a lot harder than it is. And I remember being intimidated by this myself when I started trading. And you really just have to do this and find your confidence in doing this. But I promise that this works, and it'll really help you be a stronger trader, kind of having a better understanding of how the market works. And here's the thing that might annoy some of you. I am going to be spending a lot of time on the higher time frame charts for this, but I am an intraday trader, and these are the levels that I use for intraday trading. I do get them from the higher time frame charts. And the reason that I do that is, my little orders, the market just doesn't care about them. The market is not concerned about my little Bull Barbie orders. What's moving the market is all of these bigger funds. We've got banks and hedge funds and, just the whales and the market makers. All of these big players are the ones that are actually moving the market. It really is not a mystery what's going on once you kind of understand, who the other guys are. And as little, small home retail traders, our job is to stay out of the way of the big guys. We either want to be riding on their coattails or getting the heck out of the way. So that's the whole kind of way that I look at this and why I'm really watching for these key areas in the market. So right now I'm all the way up on the weekly chart, and sometimes I'll even start on the monthly. And the whole reason is just to get perspective on what's going on and kind of looking at the chart to see what could potentially come next. Does it make sense that the market is going to keep putting in more green candles or keep putting in more red candles or whatever it is? And when you're on this sort of chart, you can get a better perspective of what's really realistic. And, just trust me, if you start on these higher time frame charts, we're not going to be trading off of these. We're just going to be charting on these. It's going to make your life so much easier. You just can't see these things on the little small intraday charts. So when you're up on these higher time frames, the very first thing you're doing is just getting a sense of trend. And, some of this is just perspective, because we hear about, how much the market is tanking and how horrible things are. So right now it's the middle of 2025. So let's just look back 5 years ago, July, August 2025. Price was on the S&P 500 futures, we're around 34.50. Right now we're trading over 63.50. So, you have to kind of put these things in perspective. That was 5 years ago. So when people are saying, oh, the market is just so rough and so terrible and it's been so horrible, look at it and see if that's really true, for one thing. I'm going to start you on the daily chart today, but I do like to kind of mark some of these major highs and major lows if we're anywhere near them. We just aren't super near that stuff today, so I'm going to go on the daily chart because we want to zoom in. I could mark all of these lows, but are we going to get them anytime soon? Probably not. I can go do that later. So what I'll do is I have the magnet turned on. This is on TradingView, and I've just gotten a little line tool. And then I can just kind of hover over, and all I'm looking for is the most obvious points in the market where the market's making a lot of touches. Because what's happening here, I'm going to put a line here. Like we can see that the market stopped a lot when it was over here. And then, looks like we had a lot of kind of pauses here as well. So let's think about this. Our little tiny orders aren't moving the market, but the big players are, the big whales, and all the big boys. So what are they doing to get in and out of the market? They can't just hit a market sell and have their big millions of dollars order pop in and pop out without having just, a big dramatic effect on the market. So what they're doing is they have a price range instead of just, if we want to get out at 62.50, we can put our order right there at 62.50. We can move it by a couple ticks. We're going to get what we want, right? But if you have millions of contracts or, a major position like that, you can't just throw it at the market all at once. So you're going to be spreading it out over time. And then to make it less obvious what you're doing, you're going to spread it out over a price range as well. Plus, it'll make it a lot easier for this thing to go into effect. So whether you're getting in or out of the market with these big major orders, you're doing it over time and price in an order block. That's really what that should be called. I don't know what it's really supposed to be called, but what that is, it's these areas where, we're having these big orders put out over time and price. And when we mark these, they're going to end up being levels that we can kind of depend on the lower time frame charts as well. So these levels are a little bit farther away. I'm going to zoom in on the daily chart so that we can see a little bit closer price action. And again, you can just see, look how many times the market either opens or closes right at that level. Look how many times we wick down to this area. And this is going to end up kind of being a price zone. You can see that those are pretty close. So this is 62.60 and 62.73.75 on the ES S&P 500 futures. So that's not a very big spot even on an intraday chart. And so we'll make that a zone. I'll show you when we get into a lower time frame chart, so it's a little bit easier to see. But that's all we're doing right now is just finding and you can have your magnet, so it'll help really tag your line or level to that exact spot. And then you can just kind of preview how these levels look before you lay them down on your chart. And it'll get easier and it'll get more simple. Now remember, we're on the daily chart right now, so we're really zoomed out. And all of these should be some pretty solid levels. The swing highs and swing lows are also really nice markers. I like to usually keep at least the most recent ones marked. And what I'll do is I'll just use this little, not the full horizontal line, but the horizontal ray tool. So I'll just put the horizontal ray tool on some of these most recent highs and lows. And it really is this simple. You're really just looking for these most obvious points in the market, because this is identifying where the big boys are doing their business. Right now, we're putting in a nice little swing high on the day. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that one too. A lot of the times I will come in and make these daily levels a little bit thicker so that I can tell these are daily levels. So you've probably heard something like this before if you've ever asked, what time frame is best. But the higher the time frame, the stronger the levels are going to be and the more reliable they're going to be. So the more we dive into a lower time frame chart, the kind of sloppier, or I mean not slop, the kind of less reliable and weaker these levels could potentially be. So this is the daily. Sometimes I'll go on to the 6 hour. I usually kind of like to look at the 4 hour a little bit better. But all we're doing here is kind of taking a look at any levels that might kind of fill in here that weren't obvious on the daily time frame. And then we can just kind of mark those. And this is not science. This is really, it's art and science blended together, right? But so these are not daily levels. So I could take these into, a lighter color like this. However you want to organize your charts, this is just an idea of mine. You could also use different colors, or you can even label them. I actually do like to label them, especially if I have a major swing high or low like this. I'll label the date. So if I ever want to reference it, because I'm going to be on a lower time frame chart when I'm actually trading these, it's a lot easier for me to remember. I'm not going to remember. That's the only way I'm going to know, is when I look at it that way. So on the 4 hour chart, I'll just keep kind of filling in some of these. And because they're, a thinner level, I can tell that they're potentially going to be weaker. Another thing that's really important to mark is these gaps. When we have gaps here, I'm going to go down to the hourly chart. It'll probably be a little bit easier to mark these. Yeah, they're over here. So when we have a gap, what we're talking about is just when price skips over between the close of one day. You can see the regular trading, or this is the regular trading hours in black and the extended trading hours in blue here. So we can see that when this closed, and my candles are blue and pink instead of red and green, but if we have a green candle, it's going to open lower and then close higher. So I'm going to take the high of that body where we closed. And then since this is a green candle, that means it opened at the lower part and closed higher. And I can just draw a little box on that little price gap. So now I've marked my price gap. Just because this is the way I like to do it, I'm going to mark this in yellow. I like to always have my gaps marked in yellow just for fun. And that way I know that it's a gap and it's always going to be there. And the other thing you'll notice is I have the midpoint line on, and I like to have those on. A lot of times price will kind of interact with that midpoint. Not exactly necessarily, sometimes it will, but I like to at least just have that line on there for reference. Sometimes these gaps are really big and sometimes they're smaller, but I will go ahead and mark those in yellow. Those are going to be important levels. We have another one here. And so even though this one got filled, we had another one over here. What you'll notice, it's like basically on that midpoint, right? So another thing that I'll do, and I'm going to show you how I kind of tie this into other strategies and things that you might develop or learn over time, whatever kind of speaks to you, is you can see we kind of have where this level, the bottom of this gap, the bottom of this gap, and this level all congregate. And so what I'll do when I have something like that is I'll just really, now my magnet's driving me crazy, but I'll mark it with another little spot so I know it's a zone. And I've been calling these party zones. But I mark these in purple, so I've got these little party zones. So when I get there, what I know when I see that is that it's a zone where the market keeps kind of hammering the same level over and over and over again, because I know that that's a level that the market and the players in the market are really enjoying to interact with. The other thing that I'll mark with these zones is I'll just kind of zoom out. We'll get the recent price action because that's important. We want to know what's going on, but we also want to know what has gone on because this will help us out a lot. But when I end up with these levels that are really close together, like this one I showed you earlier, I'll again just put a box on it. And you can color these however you want to color them, but this will draw my attention to this area as being more of a zone than a precise level, because some of these are going to be kind of precise because they're extreme highs and extreme lows. But when we've got like a congregation of levels like this, it's not going to be as precise. That's going to be a zone. So that's how I'm going to treat that. And so I just want to have that marked on my chart also. And it is really this simple. I'm going to dive down into the smaller time frame charts to kind of show you how I interact with these now on a daily basis. But real quick, I want to show you, so this is the most simple way to get support and resistance. And, we're always still learning, or at least we should be, right? So I'm still studying other ways of, interacting with the market and understanding the market. And whenever I learn something new, I can still kind of tie it into this and have more confidence in a level, or just some agreement between different strategies that these are going to be really key levels. So one of the things I like to look at is the TPO chart, and I'm not going to teach a TPO chart right now, but the kind of things that I would be looking for is just where we have a congregation of the POCs or the value area highs. We'll kind of have these clumps, and it's the same thing where I can kind of take note of that level. Oh, that's 63.45. Well, if I go back on, oops. Okay, and then I can go back onto my other chart and I can see, oh, do we have something there? Oh, maybe I can kind of mark that as a little bit of a zone down here because we had that 43. Maybe that is kind of a little zone going up into here somewhere where I can kind of mark that as confluence with my market profile chart. Or another thing that I like looking at is the volume profile. And I don't always look at it on TradingView, so this may be a little bit of a disaster, but it's the same thing where I would just be kind of looking for where we have a lot of confluence, where we have some of these high volume nodes really showing up and joining along with these levels. So I know that these are going to be key areas. At the same time, you don't want to add too much to this, or you're going to end up in the whole analysis paralysis thing. So if you're not ready for that, or if you don't need to do that, just keep it simple. Always keep it simple. No matter what I kind of learn, I end up back at just this core, support and resistance. In fact, I want to mark this level real quick before we move on. Okay, so then once we have the levels marked, this is the whole idea behind it. So here's a 5-minute chart. We'll just kind of go into here. You can see this is our trading for today. So we have these levels that we're watching, and this is a high that we ended up putting in pre-market. And, that was that really strong level that we had noticed. And sure enough, that became the major, reversal point in the market this morning. Sure enough, funny how that happens, right? So when I'm here, I would be looking for, all my little price action clues, and we have different setups so we can look for these sorts of things. Sometimes it's just the first touch. Sometimes I'll just literally have a limit order sitting there waiting for the market to come to me. This is the great thing about spending the time and charting support and resistance like this, is you can literally just wait for the market to come to you. It can test your patience sometimes, but that's why we have chats and all of this other fun stuff going on, right? Another thing that I like to do is, well, my favorite place to look for any sort of play is at these levels. So, if we're at a level here and I'm looking for a good entry in, I actually don't see a really great entry for my system here. But because we're at a level, I would be looking for something like this where we're getting either a breakout or a reversal. One of my favorites is when we get down to these really, really strong levels, because then it's a lot more simple, and I can just kind of get a real simple R&R where, do I have meat on the bone between where I want to target and any other sort of levels that I have below that might kind of be a problem. One of my favorite setups is right here, actually, and that's when we get a consolidation pattern and then a break. So basically, there's two little bear flags here. We have the flagpole and then a consolidation pattern, and then a flagpole and a consolidation pattern. I love trading these little consolidation patterns and flags and things that happen at levels, because when you have a level being broken and a pattern being broken at the same time, that ends up usually being a pretty good trade. That's where you get your confirmations, right? So a lot of traders ask me what my strategy is, and sometimes I have a hard time answering that really simply, because, what's the elevator pitch for this? I guess it's, I find key areas in the market where I can then deploy some little entry and exit strategies to get a piece of it, right? This is what helps keep me calm trading. This is what helps me keep patient trading. And this is what keeps me being able to trade for a living. A quick bonus before I go, I really focused on the horizontal lines today, but we can also look at these diagonal lines as well. I really do like playing trend lines and trend line breaks. When we end up having a trend line and then a trend line, a diagonal trend line lines up with a horizontal level, again, we have some more confluence and agreement. And again, this can help our trades. And of course, if you have any questions, the comments are here. I would love to hear your tips and tricks for finding support and resistance. And of course, we have the Discord, which you're welcome to come join and talk to us there. And of course, be sure to subscribe and turn notifications on, because I do go live and we can talk about this while the market is actually trading, which is even more exciting. And I do have some more videos just like this, and even on some more cooler stuff coming up real soon. All right, bye for now. Love you.